Claude Code prices just got hit from the one place nobody expected. Google, not Anthropic, not an open source clone, Google. Because Antigravity now gives individual developers a free agent workspace with Claude models inside it. That means the thing a lot of developers were paying for is suddenly sitting in a free Google coding tool. Claude in the editor, Claude in the agent, Claude working across files, Claude doing the kind of multi-step coding work that used to feel locked behind a paid plan. And if you use Claude Code because you want Claude to actually operate on a repo, not just chat about code, this changes the entire conversation. The question is not whether anti-gravity is interesting. The question is whether you should still be paying Claude Code prices before you have tried the free route. Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe back to the video. Here's the headline. Google Antigravity is free for individual developers, and the free individual plan includes Claude models, not just Gemini. Claude, the same family of models that made Claude Code the coding agent everyone started comparing everything else against. That is why this is bigger than another IDE launch, because for the last year, the AI coding market has been training developers to accept a very expensive idea. If you want a serious coding agent, you probably need to pay $20, $100, $200, or you start buying API credits and watching usage disappear every time an agent reads the wrong file. Anti-gravity attacks that assumption directly. It says, take an agent-first development environment, give it editor access, terminal access, browser access, model choice, artifacts, background tasks, and then put Claude inside the model picker at no cost for individuals. That is an outrageous move. It is also exactly the kind of move Google had to make. Because if developers already trust Claude for coding, the fastest way to make them try a Google coding tool is not to say Gemini is good. It is to say, fine, bring Claude too. Most free AI coding offers are not really free in the way developers care about. They are free until the interesting part starts. Free autocomplete, free chat, free small model, free starter credits that vanish the first time you ask the agent to refactor something real. Then the product quietly pushes you toward a subscription. Antigravity feels different because the free individual plan is not just a toy editor with a weak model stapled to it. Google says the individual plan is $0 per month. It includes unlimited tab completions, it includes unlimited command requests, and the model list includes Gemini, Claude, and GPT OSS. That is a shock because the expensive part of AI coding is not the text box. The expensive part is the intelligent agent loop, read the repo, plan the fix, edit files, run the command, see the failure, try again, open the browser, verify the result, then explain what changed. That loop is where paid tools become sticky, and Antigravity is giving individual developers a version of that loop for free. So when people say Claude Code just became free, the precise version is this. The official Claude Code terminal product did not suddenly become a totally unlimited free Anthropic product, but the Claude coding agent workflow, the thing most developers actually want from Claude Code, can now be routed through Antigravity without paying Anthropic directly. That difference matters, but it does not make the news smaller. It makes it more interesting. This is the part that makes the story spicy. Antigravity is a Google product. Its obvious job is to make developers use Gemini for coding. So why is Claude in there? Because Google is not just fighting Anthropic. Google is fighting developer habits. And right now, one of the strongest developer habits in AI coding is this. When the task is hard, pick Claude. When the refactor is scary, pick Claude. When the agent needs to hold a lot of moving pieces in its head, pick Claude. When the repo is messy and the prompt is not perfect, pick Claude. That habit is valuable. If Antigravity launched as a Gemini-only IDE, a lot of developers would treat it like homework. Interesting, maybe, worth installing, maybe, but not urgent. The moment Claude appears in the dropdown, the pitch changes. Now Antigravity is not asking you to abandon the model you trust, it is asking you to move the workflow around that model. That is a much smarter attack, because the tool with the best model does not always win. The tool with the best workflow around the model can win. And Antigravity is trying to make the workflow feel bigger than a terminal. Claude Code made the terminal feel powerful. Antigravity is trying to make the whole development environment feel agent native. That is the real competition, not Claude versus Gemini, agent workspace versus terminal agent. Claude Code is powerful because it lives where developers already work. The terminal, the repo, the command line, no glossy interface required. You ask for a fix and it can inspect files, edit code, run tests, and keep going. Antigravity is attacking from a different angle. It is not just trying to be a chat sidebar. It gives you two modes. One is the normal editor view where you can write code, use completions, ask for commands, and work in a familiar IDE shape. The other is the agent manager. That is the part that matters. Instead of treating the agent like a conversation you babysit, Antigravity treats the agent like a worker you dispatch. You give it a task. It plans. It works across the editor, terminal, and browser. It produces artifacts so you can see what it thinks it did. Task lists, implementation plans, screenshots, browser recordings. The pitch is simple. Do not make developers read 1,000 tool calls. Show them the proof. That is a genuinely important idea because one of the biggest problems with coding agents is not that they cannot do work. It is that you cannot quickly tell whether the work is sane. A terminal transcript can be technically complete and still be awful to review. Antigravity is trying to move the review surface from logs to artifacts. That sounds like a small interface choice. It is not. It changes how much trust a developer can give an agent before the agent becomes exhausting. Now, before everyone deletes every paid AI coding subscription, there is a catch. There is always a catch. Free does not mean unlimited frontier compute forever. Google uses rate limits. The free individual plan has basic weekly rate limits. The higher Google AI plans get more generous rate limits and flexible AI credit pools. And Google has also said that access to models is provided to the degree they have capacity. That is the part people need to hear clearly. If you code all day with agents, you may still hit limits. If you give anti-gravity giant tasks over and over, you may still burn through the allowance. If you expect free Claude to replace a heavy professional Max or API workflow with no trade-offs, you're probably going to be annoyed. But that does not kill the story, because most developers are not running coding agents like a production team of 10. Most developers are doing bursts. Fix this bug, explain this code base, build this feature, refactor this component, write the test, find the broken route for that kind of work. A free individual tier with Claude in the model list is a huge deal. It moves Claude-powered agent coding from something you budget for into something you can try today. And that matters because usage is habit. The first tool that becomes your daily default often wins long before you compare every feature. This is not really a feature announcement. It is a cost war. Claude Code put pressure on every editor because it made the terminal agent feel serious. Cursor put pressure on every editor because it made AI coding feel native. Copilot put pressure on every editor because it had distribution. Google has distribution, models, infrastructure, and now an agent workspace with other companies' models inside it. That is a dangerous combination because paid coding tools have been relying on a simple bargain. Pay us because we give you the best coding experience. Antigravity replies with a more uncomfortable bargain. What if the good enough coding experience is free, includes multiple strong models, and gets backed by Google Scale? That is the sentence every paid AI coding company hates. Not because anti-gravity is automatically better today. It may not be. Claude Code may still be cleaner for terminal-first developers. Cursor may still feel better for editor-native refactors. Some teams will still want enterprise controls, predictable usage, private deployment options, or procurement-friendly billing, but the free baseline just jumped. And when the free baseline jumps, paid tools have to justify themselves harder. They need better reliability, better review, better integrations, better security, better context management, better agent memory, better team workflows. They cannot just say, we have a coding agent now because Google has one too, and it has Claude in it. The reason developers are calling this a loophole is obvious. Claude Code is valuable because Claude is valuable. But anti-gravity separates the model from the Anthropic product. You're not paying for Claude Code, you're using Claude models inside a different agent shell. That means the price conversation changes. If your actual requirement is, I need the exact Claude Code terminal interface, then anti-gravity is not the same thing. But if your real requirement is, I want Claude to work on my code base, then anti-gravity is suddenly in the conversation. That is a very different question. Most developers do not care which company owns the interface. They care whether the thing fixes the bug, they care whether it understands the repo, they care whether it runs the test, they care whether the diff is reviewable, they care whether the bill hurts. And this is where anti-gravity becomes dangerous because it does not need to beat Claude Code for everyone. It only needs to be good enough for enough people who are about to pay. If even a small chunk of developers decide actually free anti-gravity with Claude handles my normal coding tasks, that changes the market. Paid tools then become power tools again, not default. If you install anti-gravity, do not judge it by asking one vague prompt and staring at the first answer. That is how every coding agent looks worse than it is. Try it on the kind of task that makes Claude Code valuable. Open a real repo. Pick a small but annoying issue, something with 2 or 3 files involved, something where the agent has to read before editing. Ask it to investigate first, ask for a plan, then let it implement, then make it verify with the terminal or browser. That is where anti-gravity should make sense. Not as a prettier autocomplete, not as a normal chatbot. As a place where you can hand off a coding task and then review the artifacts instead of reading every breath the agent took. And when you test Claude inside it, compare the workflow, not just a model. Does the agent choose the right files? Does it run the right checks? Does it show useful proof? Does the browser verification actually help? Does the artifact make review faster? Does it feel like less babysitting? Those are the questions that matter, because if the workflow is worse, free will not save it. But if the workflow is good enough, the price difference becomes brutal. Claude Code is not dead. That would be a lazy take. Claude Code still has a very strong identity. It is terminal first. It is direct. It has a developer culture around it. It fits naturally into repos, shells, scripts, and command line habits. For people who live in the terminal, that matters. Antigravity is not automatically a replacement for that, but it is absolutely a threat to the casual paid Claude Code user. The person who pays because they heard Claude is the best at coding. The person who does not care about terminal purity, the person who just wants an agent to fix things in a project, the person who would rather use an IDE and see screenshots than scroll logs. That user now has a free on-ramp, and once a free on-ramp exists, the paid tool has to explain why the upgrade is worth it. This is how markets change, not all at once. First, the expensive thing becomes optional for beginners, then it becomes optional for casual users, then it becomes optional for a surprising number of serious users. Then the paid product has to move up market or become dramatically better. That is why anti-gravity matters. It does not have to kill Claude Code. It just has to make people ask a worse question. Why am I paying before I have tried the free Claude option? There is also a bigger Google strategy hiding here. Anti-gravity is not just an IDE. Google is trying to own the place where agents work. That is different from owning the model. The model is one layer, the agent environment is another layer. The environment decides how tasks are represented, how memory is saved, how tools are called, how browser actions are verified, how screenshots are captured, how developers review work, how teams eventually manage many agents at once. If Google owns that layer, it can let you choose models while still keeping the workflow inside Google territory. That is why model choice is not weakness. It is bait and leverage. You come for Claude, you stay because the agent manager, artifacts, browser control, and editor integration become your workflow. Then Gemini gets another chance every time you open the model picker. That is a much smarter strategy than begging developers to switch models on day one. And it is why this announcement should make every AI coding company nervous. Google does not need to win your loyalty immediately. It only needs to become the place where you compare everything else. So here's the clean version. Claude Code did not become free in the pure official Anthropic sense, but Claude-powered agent coding just became much easier to use for free through Google Antigravity. That distinction is important, and the practical effect is still massive. If you are paying for Claude Code because you need the exact terminal product, keep using it. If you are paying because you want Claude to work on your repo, Antigravity is now something you have to test. Not eventually. Now, because the free tier changes the default decision, the old default was pay for the serious agent. The new default is try the free Claude agent workspace first, then decide if the paid tool actually earns a bill. That is a huge shift. And it is the kind of shift that sneaks up on paid software. One day, everyone assumes the best workflow costs money. Then a giant platform gives away enough of it for free. Then developers start asking why their editor has a subscription price attached to the same kind of work. Antigravity may not replace your entire setup today, but it absolutely changes what your setup has to prove. Because if Claude can work inside a free Google agent workspace, the paid tools are no longer competing against each other. They are competing against the question every developer is about to ask. Why am I still paying for this?